Welcome over to the Wednesday, Week 10 edition of the weekly rankings here with Jim Coventry and the RotoWire Fantasy Football YouTube channel here. It's crazy that we're already at Week 10. We just had the trade deadline less than 24 hours ago. The Jets were moronic as usual. We had very little movement outside of Jacoby Myers, and I think I at least am going to be one portion of the show saying don't overreact to that sort of deal. We'll get Jim's thoughts on Jacksonville's new offensive weapon as well, too, as we move throughout the show. Reminder, everyone, we have the color schemes up there a little bit, that the yellow indicates a little bit more of the injury part of things, too, but green means all go. Red, or maroon, as Jim would call it, maybe a little bit more of the lesser upside opportunities, but still highly ranked receivers. Receivers are the red here right now, but highly ranked players. Let's start first with the quarterbacks. I think we finally had a return to normalcy if you're drafting some of these guys higher. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson both end up doing well. Jalen Hurts coming off a bye. No Jaden Daniels, no Joe Burrow. Jim, can you guess which one of those quarterbacks I ended up drafting the most out of the top five guys right now? It has been a slog, it feels like, at various points. We still have multiple teams on bye, so Bengals, Cowboys, and Chiefs being chief among them offensively. This could be a week where you're streaming quarterback. I guess I'll turn the question more so Sam Darnold, how they eviscerated the Commanders on Monday night. Is this offense just that real? I mean, they acquired Rashid Shaheed at the trade deadline too. Like, is Sam Darnold rest of season in that quarterback one conversation?
It's so hard to do it, but the reality is reality. And the toughest thing with fantasy football is knowing this is a player. Even last year, he fell off the planet in the last two games, playoff game included. And so it's like always in the back of our minds. But right now, how do you argue it? And we saw Clint Kubiak before Derek Carr got hurt last year, putting up insane numbers for two games, and then they started getting everybody injured. And so is this just Clint Kubiak working with bad quarterbacks and getting the most out of them with all his boot action and play action? It's working. So, yes, I think Sam Darnold has to be, and he's like Daniel Jones last week, and he ended up being fine for fantasy. That week's coming. But right now, how do you bet on that? You can't.
Well, right, in the Cardinals defense, I had said erroneously it was Seahawks, Commanders Sunday night, Cowboys, Cardinals Monday night, and I think the Cardinals defense this week is one of those where maybe they're getting better. You look at the metrics on RotoWire or other sites, and it'll point to like middle of the pack in terms of points allowed to receivers and quarterbacks. And to me, that isn't so much the defense, but the game script that sort of allowed that situation to happen. We think of horrible defenses like the Cowboys, like the Bengals. I don't think the Cardinals are really that daunting of a matchup. And again, if you're missing Patrick Mahomes, if you're missing Dak Prescott in particular, if Sam Darnold is somehow available, I think he's a totally fine streamer this week. And one of those rest of season, then I kind of agree with you, Jim, is just sort of in that range where you're looking at most weeks. Do we finally get the return of Brock Purdy? Because this 49ers offense has been very frustrating at various points. They have a lot of different injuries. We don't have the immediate return of Brandon Ayuk, if that at all happens in the regular season. Ricky Pearsall seems to be a yo-yo of he will play, he won't play. And we've done that now for a month as well. And Brock Purdy himself has been in that same range too. If Brock Purdy's available, I think that makes them have I think the Niners have a better chance against the Rams, but the Rams are playing some of the best football across the entire league right now too.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not counting on Purdy coming back. They keep saying he's close, he's close, he's close. Ricky Pearsall, they never put on IR. What has it been, 5 games now he's been out?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So whatever they're doing with injuries, I don't trust them. Don't believe a word they're saying. Now, maybe magically Purdy puts in full practice and he starts, but Purdy's a better quarterback. He extends plays. Mac Jones really can't. That's the big difference between the two. But the 49ers are winning enough. Now, playing the Rams is a tough one. You'd like to have Brock Purdy in that game because they're going to need second reaction plays. But Mac Jones beat them a month ago. I know it was a weird game. So if Purdy's not 100%, and that toe, it probably is a pretty nasty toe injury. So if he's not 100%, maybe he can't extend plays, which is his usefulness to the team. So
right.
You can't put him out there if you can't extend plays, because then he just is Mac Jones.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, and like you said, Mac Jones has been fine. He's also been banged up as well, too. It's just been a series of injuries for San Francisco, and it should be a good game. You have Matthew Stafford ranked high, the way he's been playing, the way that he has a rapport with Devontae Adams in the red zone in particular has been awesome to see. And while Puka Nacua seems to get injured midway through every game now at this point, it still is an offensive factor for that team. And I think Rams-Niners is going to be a very good game. Another interesting game fantasy-wise, and we can talk about both sides of this, is the Giants versus the Bears. We had all assumed last week Bears-Bengals was going to be an offensive explosion. I don't know if everyone thought it would be 49 points. I'm sorry, 89 points by the end of it from the combined two teams, and the heroics of Joe Flacco coming back with the onside kick, only for the Bengals defense to once again go catastrophically bad and allow Colston Loveland to have his best game of the season. Caleb Williams inside the top 10 for you. Jackson Dart also in that same range. And the Giants are missing a ton of different secondary pieces, or at least they were last week too. So is Caleb Williams going to basically repeat what he did last week?
You have to think he will. Now, the one rub with Caleb Williams is the Bears really want to run the football. That's what they want to do. We've learned that. And so Caleb Williams is a little dangerous here. But realistically, both starting outside corners missed the game last week for the Giants. We don't know if they get one or two of them back, but it's still a secondary you can pick on. And I have to think, even if the Bears run the ball, they'll throw enough. And I do think against that secondary, they're going to be able to get things done. So, yeah, I mean, look, Uncle Ted puts out, yes, the Giants can get pressure, but how regularly do they? And Caleb Williams, one thing we've seen,
very
he's
mobile.
really, really good at getting out of the pocket. And with those bad cornerbacks, that's exactly what the Giants don't need. So this is one where Caleb Williams is in good shape if they throw. And that's right. The one worry you're going to have.
You would say maybe the counter to the great pass rush is trying to make sure that they're playing the run as well, too. And Kyle Monungai ended up having, of course, a great game against the Bengals last week. You have DeAndre Swift theoretically on route to return. We'll have to see what his status ends up being. I don't know if it really matters against the Giants for this week, but I would almost argue the issues that Caleb Williams has as a quarterback, making quick, defined reads right away, which has been an issue last year, has been a problem this year. It's almost like it's countered a little bit because that pass rush of the Giants is something that you want to be reactionary towards, and Caleb Williams being as good as he is from a mobility perspective in and outside the pocket, that might actually aid the Bears and allow Caleb Williams to do what he does best, playing off structure a little bit more. We'll have to see. I think there's going to be a lot of points in that game. I don't know about 89, but I do think Bears-Giants going to have a lot of points. And on the other side of that, Jackson Dart has been super impressive. And I had talked about this when he made his first start with the Chargers back in, when it was at week 6 at this point. The stretch that he was going to start playing in, which had two different Eagles stints, you had the Chargers and the Niners, I didn't want to roster Jackson Dart because that was supposedly supposed to be bad defenses. Well, here's a guy that's been getting 20-plus fantasy points basically every week moving forward, game. And now gets the easy part of the schedule, too. Jackson Dart at quarterback 14, I actually think he could be even higher given all the injuries the Bears are dealing with, too.
He could be high. I put the upside tag on him. Here's the thing. 2 of the last 3 games, less than 20 rushing yards. If defenses start corralling him and saying, you're not running, and you have to think, this isn't Lamar Jackson. This isn't the guy who should be running for 50 yards in 4 or 6 games. This is not that level of runner. But defenses have, and film is still coming out on him, and teams are not as good as game planning as they are in the playoffs. But eventually, you got to figure out, spy him. Don't let him run. Because who does he have to throw to? I love Wan'Dale Robinson, but he's Wan'Dale Robinson.
Right.
I mean, Theo Johnson, great, but he's Theo Johnson. These are not weapons that are going to crush an opposing team. All you do is corral Jackson Dart. And that's why I worry every week that film is going to catch up with him. And really, like I said, when Philly played him that second time, he got fantasy points, but that rushing yardage was way down.
Yeah, and maybe the Bears defense with, I think they were down 7 preferred starters by the end of that Bengals game. It does not sound like they're going to be in a position to add any more of them. I know they trade for the pass rusher from the Browns, 6th, 7th round pick to replace Dio, the guy that they signed from the Colts this offseason. But I mean, this is going to be a spot where maybe it's bad on bad, where you have a less than interesting skill position group for the Giants going against a just completely demoralized and I think injury-riddled Bears defense too. So I'm expecting a lot of offense from Jackson Dart, but I agree with you. Well, I can guarantee you the following week, Jim, when they play the Packers, Jackson Dart will still have a very good game. That is a comfortably safe call for me from the quarterbacks. You have Jacoby Brissett at 18. Again, that's more of the acknowledgement the Cardinals are going with Brissett, and maybe not rest of season, but over Kyler Murray, and we're not pretending like he's injured, or at least doesn't seem like the brass of Arizona seems to be anymore, which is good. Brissett is the better quarterback of the two, the way they've been running the offense, and Marcus Mariota, again, with the unfortunate injury to Jaden Daniels, also within that sort of quarterback one fringe spot. Are you good to move over to the running backs here?
Real quick, I sniffed this one out on the Saturday XM show, and I told people, because the line from Jonathan Gannon was, oh, well, Kyler Murray may have a role in the game. And if he said he might have a role in the game, well, what does Kyler Murray need to be effective? His foot. So if he was thinking about giving him a role, that meant his foot was well enough to play. And so I said, as soon as that comment was made, he's thinking about benching him because it would have been you're out because if your foot's hurt, Kyler Murray can't play a pocket quarterback. So I sniffed that one out ahead of time, and hopefully some people made the move on their rosters and, maybe just picked up Brissett for the long term because I don't think Kyler's coming back. I'm done.
I would agree with you. Kudos to the Cardinals for making the right choice, but it is a difficult choice when you're looking at a $250 million quarterback that has not played to that level, but kind of like Trevor Lawrence and Tua, you sort of are in a tough spot where you have to extend those guys anyway, even if they haven't been to that sort of success in their careers. So I agree with you. I think Brissett, it just seems hard for me to assume rest of season he's the guy because I don't think the Cardinals are a playoff team, but for the foreseeable future, it gives them the best chance to win. And you have to go out there with your veterans and everything and saying, we want to win the football game, right? I mean, I think Brissett gives them the best chance to go ahead and do that. Let's go to the running backs. And hopefully, Jim, we're getting the return of Bucky Irving. It is going to be a massive, big deal for me and my fantasy teams, the Scott Fish Bowl, the FSGA teams, both desperately need a Bucky Irving to make his appearance. I think we've heard all the right language thus far, but we're going to find out here again, recording early Wednesday morning, the practice cadence for Bucky Irving. Buccaneers coming off a bye. The return timetable had always been he's going to miss 3 weeks and the bye, and then we'll get him back. That had been what we had assumed. Are you kind of in that same spot? Because that also affects a guy like Rachaad White, who had been a streamer, and Sean Tucker, who was getting touchdowns towards the end of that stretch with Bucky Irving absent.
Yeah, I think the thing is Bucky Irving, and like I said, I think like you, I think we tentatively expect him back. I gave Rachaad White a yellow tag because of Irving's injury, because his ranking, Rachaad White, is all predicated on what Irving's status is. Irving was piling up fantasy points, but he was not good. He was like 2 full yards per carry less than last year, but he was getting usage and volumes king in fantasy football. We've never said that on the show before, ever.
Never.
No. So Irving was living on volume. If that foot is not 100% and he was already rushing for 2 full yards per carry less than last year, this is not the rushing offense it was last year. So for right now, we're excited Irving's coming back, but we hope that foot is fully 100% and that he is able to run at his absolute peak because he can't afford to play at any less of a level than he was before the injury.
Yeah, and I hope the Buccaneers are treating it the same way that you are, kind of in that reference point. I felt like they did that with Chris Godwin, that he immediately suffers a fibula injury, which I guess is not at all related to the ankle thing, but obviously is still. And the Buccaneers being where they are in the NFC South Division probably have a guaranteed playoff spot basically since September started. So I would have thought that would be the same thing. Let's make sure you have your best players available towards the end of the season. We'll have to see again the practice stats of Bucky Irving to be coming out later today, at least to kick off the week. We had talked about it off air. I don't think I've been more frustrated about a team that I could care less about than the New York Jets, who sell off every single part possible except the one dang thing that would have made a difference fantasy-wise. Here's Sauce Gardner. Here's Quinnen Williams. Even if it ends up being a 4th-round pick from the Chiefs, who cares? There is 0 point in having Breece Hall, and yet you end the NFL trade line with Breece Hall on the roster. Yes, I'm annoyed because I've been saying for a month, go ahead and pick up Isaiah Davis, and now I look like I have egg on my face, but I can't predict how stupid an organization the Jets continually seem to be. So now we enter a spot here. Jets versus Browns, one of the easiest games to never watch the entire NFL season, but is Breece Hall going to be a guy you're playing now moving forward on the Jets?
Well, you have to play him because he's getting some volume. I still think it's not a bad idea. If you have a deep enough roster to stash Isaiah Davis, don't be surprised that if Breece Hall is a little bit nicked up, that he just simply says, I can't play.
I agree.
He's going into free agency. So
my hamstring. It's not feeling good. I guess got to put me on injury reserve, guys. With how vocal he was on Twitter in the 48 hours leading up to the NFL trade deadline, and for those of you guys, I guess, not familiar, Breece Hall did delete a few tweets, but it was more or less being like, just get me out of here. Like, we were seeing the cage emoji where he's shaking that, and he's peeking behind a tree, waiting for it. It never ended up transpiring. Again, I don't know if that was just being petty from the Jets' perspective, not moving him to any team, but especially the Chiefs, for example, who were heavily rumored to be interested in him. But that would be my answer, right? That Breece Hall, who has been injury-prone in his career as is, if he were to just have some sort of nagging injury that requires him to miss at minimum the final month of the season. But I had been wrong about that. I thought Brees Hall was going to be traded. So I can't tell people, no. Now still keep holding out on Isaiah Davis. Like I feel like I was already wrong in this premise. And I don't know. I feel guilty recommending keeping Isaiah Davis any further.
Well, how could you feel guilty? Most people, including Brees Hall, probably thought there was something getting done.
Sure.
So, I mean, it was a preemptive move, and there's never a guarantee a trade is made. You made the right move. And look, Isaiah Davis, he's not far off from flex viability on his own.
Right.
Here in a 12-team league.
Mm-hmm.
He's getting work, and he's good. So, like I said, don't be surprised, though, if Brees Hall comes up with some kind of an injury.
Yeah, it's hard to project, but that would be one of those monkey paw curl scenarios where I've been recommending Isaiah Davis for a month, and he actually is an impact in the fantasy playoffs, but you would have probably dropped him up to that point, in the 4 weeks before that ends up happening. Let's talk about the Chargers situation. Now, we had the unfortunate news that Joe Alt placed on season-ending injured reserve after undergoing surgery to repair what was another high ankle sprain, his second of the year. Only played 2 games healthy after recovering from an ankle injury, now done for the year. I'm a little bit worried that the Chargers offense will go back to what we saw just a couple weeks prior, where short passes to Rondé Gadsden, Keenan Allen, Ladd McConkey ends up getting more volume, but that significantly hampers the rushing attack. Kamani Vidal ended up having a good game against some of the bad defenses, like the Dolphins, for example, but got shut down last week, and they're not going to be in a scenario with the AFC West division games still in tow where Vidal ends up being in a favorable spot. And then Omarion Hampton theoretically is returning here in a couple weeks too. So Kamani Vidal all the way down to number 20 on your list this week.
It's tough because he had 2 horrible games and he had 2 great games. And like you said, matchups are a little bit tougher. He's not really getting much done. So in terms of this particular game, well, you're looking at Vidal at running back 20 to play in Pittsburgh. On paper, Pittsburgh's been a bad run defense last year. Certainly didn't look like a bad run defense last week.
Not against Jonathan Taylor. Mm-hmm.
And they sold. So what they did was they sold out to stop the run, but they also blitzed. So they kind of used run blitzes that are also designed to get to the quarterback. Might do the same thing here because with that offensive line problem in Los Angeles, you want to get pressure and I know the Chargers want to throw it short, but you want to force the issue. You want to speed the plays up. I think that's what they want to do. So Vidal is a very, very nerve-wracking play here.
I agree with you. I think like around that same range as Etienne, Jalen Warren. I feel much more comfortable with both of those, although Etienne in a very tough matchup against a very gamey defense in Houston as well, too. Like Vidal or Brees Hall is probably a question that people are going to have to ask. And I think that's one of those I'd answer probably Brees Hall, but I'm not really enthusiastic about either one. So it's going to be a tough spot. Speaking of ETN, I don't normally answer or we have trade questions in the chat, but I think in this case, it's an interesting one too. So somebody had asked, would you trade Travis Etienne for Cortland Sutton? Now, important note here that Saquon Barkley, Dobbs, and theoretically Trey Benson coming back soon for the Cardinals, that they have a little bit of depth with ETN, but Cortland Sutton being one of those guys with this erratic Broncos offense, not a guarantee that you want to go ahead and acquire either.
Running back depth is so important. Dobbs has an injury history, and he's been healthy so far. But man, going with him is, and we don't know that Trey Benson's coming back 100%. We really don't know what the deal with is. It was a serious enough injury that he's been shut down. So I would not like to play games at running back depth here, knowing that particular roster. That's my take on it. So I don't know. I mean, the trade on the surface makes sense, but it could come back to bite you if your guys are missing time. Back to ETN, I was saying before the Jacksonville bye, if Liam Cohen really thinks about this and he thinks about what his offense was, he'll have to remember this offense was at its best in the first 4 weeks of the season when the engine of the offense was ETN. And then all of a sudden in week 5, they started to go with a pass-heavy attack. Once they did that, the whole offense fell apart. I said after the bye, they're going to go back to ETN. They did 22 carries and 5 catches. So he didn't get a touchdown. He had a few chances, but ETN, they're getting him outside. And that against Houston, that is a place you can run. But ETN, I do think they've learned he has to be the engine of the offense.
Yeah, frustrating. So Bashal Tootin gets the opportunity to punch in the end zone, even though ETN was the one that ended up getting them down there on multiple drives. Different defense, Raiders, compared to the Texans, but you're right. I think they've been susceptible to the outside runs, and explosive plays are going to be at a premium now with Travis Hunter on injured reserve, Brian Thomas banged up for what feels like the 5th time this season at this point, and I would imagine at least a slow reacclimation acclimation to the offense for Jacoby Myers, a new acquisition at the trade deadline as well too. The Seahawks offense we talked about from Sam Darnold's perspective, but Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker continue to be a very frustrating combo of running backs. You have Zach Charbonnet who scores the touchdowns, Kenneth Walker who does everything else. I think they're right on that range where you have them right now, like running back 23, 24, where if you drafted Kenneth Walker in particular, you're probably playing him. But is there any upside in your mind? Like, have you seen something from the Seahawks offense to say, I have faith Kenneth Walker, especially come fantasy postseason, is going to be a difference maker? Or is this one of those with depth issues coming up with bye weeks that maybe could move Kenneth Walker to get a more valuable piece?
I keep telling people, so people have been creating narratives for Kenneth Walker every year. And I told you in the preseason, I told everybody, don't buy the narratives. These narratives don't pan out. Kenneth Walker has single-digit PPR points in his last 4 games. Great. He's maybe a flex.
Right.
Probably a flex. That's it. Zach Charbonnet has been a little bit better, but marginally. In the last 4 games where Walker's had 4 single-digit PPR, at least Charbonnet has a 19.5 and an 11.8 in there. He also has a 4.7 and a 5.6. So Charbonnet is more likely to score a touchdown. So he's a safer flex or a low-end RB2. Walker, I just don't see it coming. He's had a couple matchups where the outside run's been favorable, and he still hasn't gotten it done in those. So it's a real problem right now.
I'm with you. It's been frustrating as somebody that has very few shares of Kenneth Walker, but I was hoping that one of Zach Charbonnet or Walker be injured and that makes it easier. Well, that has not happened. Of course, these guys have stayed healthy for most of the year. Humor me a little bit with this, and we'll move over to the receivers in a second, but we are recording this again early Wednesday morning. If DeAndre Swift ends up trending towards not playing against the Giants this week, where would Kyle Monangai get moved to in your ranking? So again, with the concept that DeAndre Swift does not play against the Giants this week, where do you end up putting Kyle Monangai?
The Giants are not a good run defense, and the Bears are extremely good at blocking up that offensive line. A lot of people aren't really noticing, but they are getting pushed in the run game. They're opening up holes. So I think Monangai, I'm going to probably I won't put him exactly where Swift is at, but not far off. I'll probably move him one spot lower. Like if Bucky Irving plays, I'll move him behind Bucky Irving. I'll put him right ahead of J.K. Dobbins. So instead of 14, I'll put him at 15.
I feel so good. That's exactly when I was looking at your rankings. That's exactly where I put him too, because we get these questions asked all the time, whether it be on Twitter, on SiriusXM as well too. Like, would you play Kyle Monangai or would you play Breece Hall? I'm playing Monangai if it's DeAndre Swift out. And honestly, even if DeAndre Swift is available, we have watched the Bears try to allow their veteran to get back healthy from this groin issue, the soft tissue issue, lower body injury thing, where you have both DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai as a factor. With how bad this Giants run defense is, even if Swift is available, I don't think there's any guarantees 100%. Like, I wouldn't mind playing him possibly over Alvin Kamara, right? Like running back 27,
100%,
right?
Like, 100% on that.
Yeah, I think Monangai still is a play, even if DeAndre Swift is available this week.
Yeah, you know, and when you bring up Alvin Kamara, he's like averaging 5 PPR points in his last 3 games. He's unstartable. He is and not only did he lose Eric McCoy to center for the season, they traded away their left guard Trevor Penning.
That's right. Yes,
playing decently. So now that line is down 2 starters, and Kamara's old, and there's no way out here. And I put Kamara at 27, and I wanted to put him lower, but the guys beneath him, they're not even locks; they get touches.
Right.
So,
well, let's use this as a launching off point, because there's 2 receiver trades that happened: Rashid Shaheed, Jacoby Myers. I would almost argue either both of them, I should say, are inconsequential. We'll get to that kind of the factor of that here in a second when we talk about both those offenses. But I don't know what the Saints offense does to replace Rashid Shaheed's basically 6 to 8 targets per game. Now, they weren't using the burner Rashid Shaheed like I would. Like, this should be, let's use him vertically. It felt like Rashid Shaheed was getting 4-yard bubbles or underneath throws, both with Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck. But I have to imagine Chris Olave is basically maxed out in that capacity. And I think Juwan Johnson is too. Like, maybe Juwan Johnson gets a bit more volume, but does it end up being Brandon Cooks that gets some of that? I don't think Brandon Cooks is really a picture of health at this point in his career. Devon Vele has been a super big disappointment after acquiring him before the season starts. Like, maybe Alvin Kamara just kind of assumes a bit more of that role, but it feels like we're asking a lot because Kamara could have done it at any point, and the Saints have not chose to do so thus far.
Yeah, no. So it's this way. And look, I don't like that silly first read number that these companies use.
Sure.
Duh, first read, of course. Oh yeah, guess what? Jackson Smith and Jigma is the first read. Beautiful. You're really smart for saying that. But I will say this now, and the reason I'm going to say this is you'll understand when I say it. This offense with Tyler Shuck. The first read in almost every play is going to be Chris Olave. That's where, and if he can get the ball to him, he's going to get the ball to him. Olave is going to see more targets. It's going to be 10 plus a game probably. The second read is going to be Juwan Johnson. That's going to be your middle of the field read. Brandon Cooks will be occasionally, of course, there are some plays where he'll get it, but he is not going to be a priority in that because he doesn't really separate like he used to.
Correct.
And they're not throwing downfield because, like I said, their center's out, their left guard's out, the quarterback's limited. So this is going to be a short and intermediate game. Now, for fantasy managers, hopefully they can move the chains just enough to give a little bit of ceiling to Olave and Juwan Johnson. But their floors are going to remain rock solid in this, and they're still going to trail in most games. So I think Olave's value does go up here.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I had just assumed, especially with the injury concerns that Olave's had throughout his career, that you wouldn't want to keep exposing him to that, but you're also not able to throw the ball deep. So if the offense is only capable of throwing it short, I guess you would rather do that than Devon Bailey or Brandon Cooks. That's where I go back to Alvin Kamara. Like he could be used that way. They just haven't done it all this season.
Joe, the thing about Olave, and I had talked about this in the preseason, and I get it, concussions are very scary. But Olave had a 16 and a 15 game season before that.
Mm-hmm.
The one season he had, so he's been healthy other than the year he had the concussions last year. And a concussion can happen to any player at any time.
Correct. Right.
But I think a lot of times that maybe that was a little more of a recency bias thing, that we saw how bad the concussion were. We got scared for him. We got scared for Chris Olave because they were ugly concussions.
But, I mean, you're preaching to the choir because that was my guy entering the draft season. It was Mason Taylor and Chris Olave. I think I had 8 different drafts where I had Chris Olave. You're preaching to the choir with me in this.
Yeah, so I think we just look. Could he get a concussion in the next game? I pray not, but he certainly could, and the season could be over. But that could be any player. I think it's overstated the injury history of Chris Olave. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you again. That was my most drafted receiver this year, and probably one of my most drafted guys. Period. I think I had like a 60% exposure on best ball.
Yes.
You'd think I'd be doing well, Jim, in best ball. No, not really.
Oh, no.
But Olave at least has been fine enough. Let's talk about this Jacksonville offense now. Again, just to kind of overlay this for everyone, we had Travis Hunter was going to have his breakout Wednesday, up now on injury reserve, could be done for the season with an injury that was suffered during practice of the non-contact variety, which we have not heard any more reports about. Either way, out the next 4 weeks. You have then Brian Thomas Jr. get injured once again during that Raiders game. It sounds like it's a different injury, but honestly, this guy's been banged up the entire year, like shoulder, ankle, mental stuff. I don't know, but it's to this point where I don't know if Brian Thomas is a guarantee play for you despite the draft capital invested. And then they acquired Jacoby Myers, who had been asking out for Las Vegas since the beginning of the season. There was thought that, oh no, the Raiders could actually use him. Wrong. Zero idea why Jacoby Myers wasn't more of a featured target, especially with Brock Bowers out, but becomes now a candidate where the Jaguars give up a 4th and 6th round pick on top of the 1st round pick that they moved for Travis Hunter last year. That's significant draft capital. That's a big move for a receiver that I don't know was really that sought after from the NFL side of things, but clearly Jacksonville thought he's going to be relevant piece. I looked at the history of midseason trade receivers, Jim, and I know you're familiar with this too. It's really bleak. Even guys like Amari Cooper, who are supposed to be talented, end up not doing a whole lot. It helped the Buffalo Bills offense, but there wasn't a fantasy factor for it. I have made the argument, and I made the argument now 2 weeks prior when we've been hearing rumors about Jacoby Myers being traded. If you can get value right now, when people are speculating on the talent of what Myers is on an offense that features and the draft capital invested in him, absolutely do so. But I'm very skeptical that Jacoby Myers becomes immediately a fantasy starter for you with Jacksonville.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you said. I think the optimism for a floor play is that Jacoby Myers can get open in the short and intermediate area of the field. And one of the things Liam Cohen has done with Trevor Lawrence is has him get the ball out quickly. Brian Thomas, they're selling it as a low-grade high ankle sprain.
Whatever that means.
Shut up with that.
Yes.
I'm so tired of hearing that. He's going to miss time. Hunter, like you said, is going to miss time. De'Ami Brown got a concussion last week.
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you might be looking at Parker Washington and Jacoby Myers. And yes, they want to run the ball, but they are going to have to throw. And Jacoby Myers in a short week could just be given enough routes that he's already good at. Just get, drag routes, middle of the field. He could do that right away. I don't know how much chemistry there'll have to be for the professional that he is to get in a spot where Lawrence can throw the ball. I'm not saying this is a big week for him, but I'm saying you could use him as a flex and a floor play. I think he gets 5 catches. I think he gets 45 yards, and I don't think it's a terrible game. Of course, I don't think he's going off, but, so I kind of see it like you do, but I do think they're going to need him as a move the chains possession guy.
Is it wrong for me to say that I think Parker Washington still is my preferred target in Jacksonville? Because chemistry matters so much, especially if you're getting the ball out quick. And he's got 19 targets over the past 2 weeks. Everyone wanted to go Gugu and Banana over Travis Hunter's game against the Rams, but we all ignored Parker Washington getting 10 targets. Then Bye happens, he gets 9, was the clear top receiver for them again. We can debate the talent of Parker Washington relative to the guys that Jacksonville has and had entering the season, but the fact of the matter is he has been Trevor Lawrence's guy, it feels like, for a bunch of this year.
You speak correctly on that as well. Now, interesting thing is that Parker Washington has played 2/3 of his snaps on the outside, which would put him on Stingley or Lassiter. That's a problem. Right. If he's on Stingley or Lassiter, that's a real problem because I don't know that he has the talent to beat those guys. Jacoby Myers has a history of being able to play in the slot. So they may immediately make him the slot receiver. And the slot is supposed to be rich in that offense. Supposed to be. But at least it's in your sight line. The one beautiful thing, if you have a good slot receiver, it's in your sight line. And not that he was a slot receiver, he wasn't, but Brian Thomas did not want to go over the middle of the field. It was very obvious. He wanted nothing to do with that. Travis Hunter was not a polished enough player to be able to run nuanced routes there. It may just, again, like you said, the Parker Washington is interesting, but it looks like he's going to be an outside receiver here. And if he is, this is a real bad matchup for him.
I think that's really good analysis for a guy that I think I'm very happy to speculate on in waiver wires and free agency. We still have it upcoming, but maybe not this week. I think I'm with you on that. Let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings, who get the upset win over the Detroit Lions. JJ McCarthy makes his return after being soft bench slash injured. You're going to hear everyone who said that, for Joe, how dare you joke that he was actually benched. Look what he did against the Lions. Well, sub 150 passing yards. He ends up running. He does have the turnover. He made big plays when it mattered, but this is also a Lions defense that has had a lot of injuries, and they were supposed to get a little bit healthier after the bye. I wasn't surprised the Vikings won. I have so much respect from Kevin O'Connell as a coach, but I think that's kind of what you're just hoping McCarthy does. Here's 150 passing yards. Don't make too many errors. And hopefully we make some exotic defensive plays, or there's something that goes in our favor to keep these games close and competitive. Now you have the Ravens defense. And again, if you look on RotoWire or the other sites, it'll be like Ravens 28th against opposing receivers or quarterbacks. And we talked about this very point last week. They all got healthy after the bye. Tua struggles, and honestly, the Dolphins shot themselves in the foot so many times. Tua probably could have had a bit more offense, but I am not ready to recommend JJ McCarthy as a quarterback streamer this week because I have a lot of respect for now this healthy version of the Ravens defense.
Yeah, look, if you had JJ McCarthy as a super flex option and you used him last week, you were happy. He ran for a touchdown. Sure. He threw 2, and that was beautiful. He does not look good. When he gets pressure, he immediately looks like he's lost. It's like literally deer in the headlights. And the Lions started just heating him up, sending people. And you could just see he was lost. And don't think that Baltimore, their coaching staff, Zach Orr, is going to have seen that and said, all right, we might not have the best pass rush in the world, but we're going to heat them up. We're going to send people because their corners, look, you can't cover Justin Jefferson one-on-one, but right. Their corners at least can be a little sticky for a while, play a little press man and see, but they're going to go after him. They're going to go after him. And, so there's that. And like I said, for fantasy, it worked last week. I don't know if it'll keep working like that. That's what against the Bears. The Bears, he was like terrible for like a half.
Yeah,
and then
it was a quarter.
They made a few big plays and it worked out. So again, for fantasy, take your chances with them. But like Greg Cosell said, he is going to need at least a year of development. And there's no guarantee beyond that. But yes, so he looked very bad on film.
Yeah, look, Jim, we're already triggering people in the chat by saying this. I just point to the times in which that you feel comfortable saying McCarthy is anywhere worth a top 10 draft pick in any of the games that he's played. Like there have been moments, which is the whole reason I think I have a lot of faith in Kevin O'Connell, and the athleticism of JJ McCarthy is part of the reason why Kevin O'Connell wanted to get him. Like we can have the supercomputer quarterbacks like Sam Darnold, for example. Carson Wentz is not described that way ever in his life, but you can have the veterans be able to read defenses. You're hoping that Kevin O'Connell as a coach can get that point from McCarthy. What you hadn't had in the Sam Darnolds and Wentz's was the athleticism that McCarthy has been living off of in the very few starts. It's, again, the reason why we're saying in a dynasty perspective, it's totally fine, but by no means was McCarthy a good quarterback despite the outcome of a win. It's why I always get super annoyed when people are like, oh, well, quarterback is good because they get wins. Like it's 22 people that make a difference on this, please. So come on now. Come on.
There's this comment. Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. Was Trent Dilfer Tom Brady? There's your question. Right there. Yes, he didn't win. His team won. And that was the beauty of the Vikings. They are a team. They're a defensive team. They're
against a divisional opponent as well, too, that you know. Right.
Yes.
That's it. Yeah.
And I told our RotoWire teammate, Alan Soslowski, who had taken Detroit in Survivor,
oh, no.
That's a nutsy move. I go, it's a divisional game. And that's all I said. It's a divisional game. That's my way of saying, dude, you can't do that. These divisional games, and I won't even bet divisional games.
Yeah.
It has to be a really, really weird circumstance because divisional games, good luck seeing which way those go.
So the reason I brought up McCarthy initially was to kind of expand on this because I had the argument early in the season watching McCarthy play a little bit that I was concerned if you could trade Justin Jefferson at his value, which again was a top 5 pick, go ahead and do so. I think I'm still okay if you're rostering Justin Jefferson, but now the new outcome of this, or new asset to this equation is Jordan Addison, who returned from suspension, had Carson Wentz basically the whole time, and was a useful fantasy asset in the duration that Carson Wentz is there. When I'm talking about a quarterback that I have concerns won't throw for 200 passing yards most games, it shouldn't necessarily be Justin Jefferson impacted, but I do think Jordan Addison's one of those guys that I would be very happy to move if I certainly could.
Jordan Addison is the loser. 2 catches, 48 yards. He did get a 16-yard rush. He's the loser here because Jefferson is going to get open instantaneously. And that is going to at least make J.J. McCarthy look a little better than he is. Because if you throw the ball to Jefferson, usually good things happen. And he can get open super fast. T.J. Hockenson took a big hit. He got a touchdown, yes, but 2 for 11. So J.J. McCarthy is probably smart enough to say, got to get the ball to the other J.J., Justin Jefferson. And that's probably what's going to be. It's going to be a lot of forced targets to him. And I don't know whether Aaron Jones' shoulder injury is going to be an issue. But
yes.
If he is healthy, there's going to be some dump-offs to Aaron Jones. And I think they're going to be called and schemed up. So I do really worry that Addison and Hockenson, this is my preseason take. On those. Those two are going to take the hit because of the situation.
Yeah, somebody in the chat's asking Addison or Metcalf. At least we have Metcalf in your rankings right now at 15, Addison at 20. I am nervous about Metcalf. I think for this week, there's a few leagues where he's my kind of wide receiver three. If you're the Chargers, that's kind of the one lone option you want to take away defensively from them. So what's your thoughts on this matchup?
And the Pittsburgh Steelers matchup?
Yeah, with Metcalf.
Yeah, you know what? I don't understand. I really don't understand what the Steelers are trying to accomplish here. 3 of the lower yardage games for Metcalf in the last 2. They threw 17 passes to the tight end 2 weeks ago. I think it was 16 this past week. And Metcalf's like not getting targets. And it was going so well with Rodgers. And Arthur Smith he gets so enamored with these tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
It's at the expense of Metcalf. At some point, now they won last week, so why should they go away from it, right? So there's that. So and I understand Cincy. Maybe against Cincy, it was they're so bad against tight ends, throw to your tight ends. But then when they did it last week, I'm like, wow, this is a little much. Darnell Washington being featured as an X receiver? Really? What is he getting after the catch for you?
Right.
So I just don't understand. And it's a little frustrating to watch. You would think they'll get back to Metcalf. Metcalf had a lot of good games this year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I can't tell you what Arthur Smith's going to do right now. So I have Metcalf with the downside tag.
I think that's the right call. Yeah.
Right. And I got him at 15. I got Addison at 20. I got them both at the downside tag because both are in situations where they could get squeezed out.
I'm entirely with you on both those scenarios. I have a league roster spot where it's like Wan'Dale Robinson, DK Metcalf, or Jordan Addison, and I'm really struggling with that call. And it probably shouldn't be that much of a struggle, given that Metcalf has gotten more volume. He's been a red zone threat. Jordan Addison, we know, is an explosive guy, just playing with a bad quarterback. Like, I have major reservations about that overall. And Wan'Dale Robinson, you have it listed at 27. Real quick, let's talk about the team that scores 47 points, and yet somehow Roma Dunze gets 0 in fantasy.
Oh my God.
What happened in this game other than DJ Moore being used in a comically different fashion than he has at any other point, really, in his Bears tenure? Like, I love the trick plays for DJ Moore. I love that DJ Moore was involved in the offense the way he was, but it should not come at the expense of Roma Dunze.
So, look, in my mind, both players are stars. There was some off the field thing between Ben Johnson and DJ Moore about DJ Moore's body language, and Ben Johnson just wouldn't let it go. Coming out of the bye, it was clear they had a plan for DJ Moore in the first half of that game against Washington. But then the bad weather started hitting the second half. Moore got hurt. And then the next game, I can't remember the game after. It was weird. But the last 2 games, he's been 72 and 73 yards. He actually had a 17-yard touchdown run as well. So DJ Moore is beginning to look like the player he should have all along. But like you said, I don't think Moore is better than Odunze. I don't think Odunze is better than Moore. They're different. I think they're both star level players, and they're so into the run game, but it's been working. So it's the run game is at the expense of the passing attack, but I think the Bears are probably wise for trusting their rushing attack right now. But Roma Odunze, I can't really explain what's going on because 3 of the last 4 games, 5.2 or fewer PPR points. He has a 2 for 32 against Washington, a 2 for 31 against the Saints. He had the good game against Baltimore, and then he goose-egged. And his targets in 3 of those games, 5, 6, and 3. So Odunze, for whatever reason, is kind of falling behind here.
Yeah, it seems unexplainable to me. I do think that gets rectified somewhat here against the Giants, though.
Joe, I just thought of it. I should have thought of this earlier. I think early in the season, defenses probably assumed DJ Moore was the guy, and defenses probably were, skewing things his way. And then they realized after a few weeks, oh, this offense is going through Roma Odunze. So it's possible defenses are rolling more toward Odunze. And maybe Odunze's not at that level yet where that's happening. Maybe he's not at that point where he's able to win consistently. Maybe that explains 2 30-yard games in a good second.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly could be. Let's transition over to the tight end position. Not only did my Packers lose in stupid fashion as per usual, the Panthers, but also lost the only fun weapon that we have had for the last 5 years in Tucker Kraft, who's now torn his ACL, done for the season. I made the argument on the waiver wire article, which gets updated daily leading up to Thursday's game. You can see it right now on the RotoWire site. YouTube 15 gets you 15% off if you want a subscription to the RotoWire site itself. Luke Musgrave is going to be incorrectly cited as like a 1-for-1 replacement. People are going to bring up that Luke Musgrave was a second-round pick. They're going to talk about how he had playing time prior to multiple unfortunate injuries, including a ruptured spleen at various points. Luke Musgrave is more liable to have the yard line trip him than do anything short of a yak opportunity like Tucker Kraft have been doing for the Packers offense. It is not, and I'm going to just continue to say this because people are going to have this wrong. It is not the Packers offense using the tight end position. It's Tucker Kraft being uniquely good at the things the Packers were using him to do. It's what you want your coach to have. When you have a talented guy after the catch, get him in position. Luke Musgrave is the antithesis of talented after the catch, and I think more so is going to be like a 3 for 40-yard guy. He's going to join the doldrums of Mason Taylor and Jawan Johnson and Colston Loveland's of the world, where kind of low-end tight end 1 by volume, by necessity, but I do not think we'll have the Tucker Kraft impact. Do you share the same thought process that I do with the second-round pick from a couple years ago?
So Luke Musgrave had 4 games with at least 49 yards, not great, before he got hurt and Tucker Kraft took over at the end of his rookie season in 2023. There were plays where Luke Musgrave was schemed wide open, just like Tucker Kraft was. You're right, but he's not obviously the player after the catch that he is. Now, also remember, Tucker Kraft had a number of games with only 4 targets. That was fairly common. Now, he had a couple of games where he went off. So if Luke Musgrave is getting 4 targets, that's problematic. And you'll see I ranked him as tight end 20. Being the Packers tight end has real value. But when I did some rankings, I boosted the wide receiver targets and didn't give those Kraft targets all to Musgrave like you're intimating. So Musgrave, yes, tight end 20, fine, because they will use their tight end in the red zone. And maybe possibly Musgrave has gotten better,
Sure.
but we haven't seen him on the field. We don't know.
Yeah.
But it's a hedge. That's why I don't have there's no aggression in his ranking.
Yeah, and that's fair. And to your point, you have Romeo Dobbs healthy. Christian Watson returned 2 weeks ago, but Dontavian Wicks has missed multiple weeks. We have a day-to-day injury for Matthew Golden as well, too. Jaden Reed still not anywhere close to coming back. Like, I actually think the biggest beneficiary of the Tucker Kraft injury is Christian Watson, who necessity is going to have to see more volume. I just don't know if that's going to work and function correctly. Certainly against the Eagles, but even moving forward, I think Matt LaFleur is going to have a bit more of the training wheels put on, which is frustrating because the offense is already running at training wheel capacity with how many short yardage throws and behind the line passes that are happening. I would much rather roster Colston Loveland than Luke Musgrave rest of season. Maybe it's a bet that Cole Kmet just won't be healthy all year. Cole Kmet suffered a concussion in that Bengals win, and it's why Colston Loveland ended up getting the explosive game that he did, not just because the Bengals defense is atrocious. But we know history concussions, at least of recent memory, is that they'll miss at least the next game. I really, really think you can't put the genie back in the bottle after 2 games where Colston Loveland ends up doing well. We think he will against the Giants. And at that point, with the draft capital invest in Colston Loveland, I just think he ends up playing more and getting more opportunities over Cole Kmet when he comes back healthy. So that's why I, at least in the waiver wire article, recommended Colston Loveland over Luke Musgrave.
No, it totally makes sense. Would totally go with that as well. Again, with the Bears, the only thing we're worrying about is that running game is going well. They really want to commit to it. And the Giants could be a matchup where they run a lot. So, again, a little nervous with the Bears pass catchers. Hopefully they throw enough to make all of them relevant here. But you are right. Colston Loveland's in an excellent spot to emerge. And he had 3 catches in each of the prior 2 games before going off against Cincinnati. So he was coming out of the bye already being a bigger part of the offense.
Love the recommendation of Dallas Goedert at tight end 6. Again, my Packers going against the Eagles on Monday Night Football. We would assume A.J. Brown comes back. We'll have to, I guess, sort of see what his status ends up being with how bad that secondary is, with how susceptible they are to big-bodied players just beating all their tiny corners, which was easily projectable entering the season. I think Dallas Goedert actually is going to be a monster, and I think he'll have at least 1 touchdown. If I'm looking at anytime touchdown opportunities for Eagles, Packers, Goedert is certainly among that group, and I think he is going to have a relevant fantasy day here Monday night.
I was excited that Philadelphia really started to show the ability in the last 2 games that they started to figure out some balance on their offense, and then it made it tougher for defenses to deal with them. And then that bye week came at a perfect time. I really think they're in a spot to integrate even more things and build on the success that they had, especially in that last game. So I'm very, very excited here. So yeah, Goddard though has been very touchdown dependent, and I know that can be fluky, but at some point, he continues to be a big-time read. They have schemed plays to him inside the 5-yard line. And if they're doing that, that's part of their offense, then it really, at the tight end, look, you score a touchdown, you're gold. So putting Goddard there, I have no issue with that.
Yeah, it will not be a fluky against the Packers. I think I'd sooner bet he scores 2 touchdowns than 0 come Monday Night Football. Packers might still win because they're the most frustrating team in the NFL, but I think Dallas Goedert certainly has a game. Is there any other tight end that you want to mention here before we sign off for today?
Mark Andrews at number 9. Told you a while back when Lamar's back and Ricard's back, they'll go to him. And he scored 2 touchdowns last week. They didn't need him a lot because they had a big lead. But again, with Minnesota, they'll be able to hold off some of those sim blitzes, but they will go over the top to Andrews. Andrews is their seam stretcher. It won't be gold every week, but he is back in that equation. We're like last year, from like week 6 on last year, he was a weekly starter for you.
Yeah, and gets the touchdowns like we saw last Thursday against the Dolphins as well, too. All right, well, that does it for us in the Wednesday edition here, the weekly rankings with Jim Coventry. You can follow Jim Coventry at Jim Coventry NFL on Twitter. You'll have the start sit as well 2 hours before kickoff on Sunday. We will have another London game. I thought we were done with those, Jim. Unfortunately, we're not. So you'll be doing it in unison with that Monday game, again 2 hours before the normal kickoffs on Sunday as well too. And if you want to argue with me more about JJ McCarthy, happy to do so on Twitter, JB Fantasy Sports. Always happy to talk about bad quarterback play and why the quarterback stat win-loss is one of the dumbest ones in the NFL. But until that point, we'll be back in this time again next Wednesday. Thanks everyone for listening, and appreciate you all following along.